Welcome to the shop. Recently, I have become exceedingly dissatisfied with my shop vac. Now, not the vac itself, mind you, but with the filters. I just purchased a brand new filter for it, and it cost me around $20 and a couple of bucks shipping. I put it in, and within a week, it had gotten so plugged with the dust from my lathe and my sander and my bandsaw that it literally imploded and fell into the vacuum. And when that happened, it began blowing dust right out the exhaust port, which can't be good for the motor. I use my shop vac for all of my small tools. And even though I've got a dust collector that I'm still working on setting up, I plan to continue to use the shop vac for many of the small tools, as well as for general shop cleanup. I wanted to do something about the issue with the filter, so I finally broke down and bought myself one of these Oneida Dust Deputies. Now this is the small model, and basically I picked up a 5-gallon bucket with a lid. You just mount it to a 5-gallon bucket and hook it to your shop vac, and it's supposed to collect 99% of the dust in the bucket. If it does, and if it works the way that the literature says that it does, this should make my filters last a lot longer, and it should also keep the airflow on my shop vac at its optimum level, which is going to remove more dust and more debris from my shop. I thought what I would do tonight is begin working on setting this up. I'd like to get it mounted to the bucket. I'd like to do like a test run, make sure everything's working properly. And then I'll come back later, maybe, I don't know if I'll do a video or not, but later on I'll come back and I'll find some way to mount it to my shop vac. It may be just some straps where I strap it to the vac. I may build a little cart for it. I really don't know at this point, but I'm just ready to do what I can to extend the life of the filters and to help that vac run as optimally as possible. So, with all that being said, let's go ahead and get this unboxed and let's start putting it together. I purchased this shop vac online. I got it off of eBay. I believe I paid right around $58 for it, and that included shipping. So I was really excited about that. The company that I bought it from had it here. I ordered it last Thursday, and I had it shipped to work. And when I got to work today, it was sitting there waiting for me. So I was real happy with the shipping. It was very quick. This model doesn't contain any extra parts. It is strictly the Cyclone, so I'm going to have to provide my own bolts for the bucket, and I'm also going to have to provide a gasket, which shouldn't be a problem. I've got some 1/4-inch rubber that I use when I make my cooler boxes, and I should be able to cut a nice gasket out of that. Also, something of note, the inlet and the outlet on this particular Dust Deputy are 2-inch. They're built just for the shop vac, so that's going to work out real well. Now, I didn't buy the entire Dust Deputy kit. I simply bought the Cyclone. And the reason why is that this was like $58 shipped to my house. I could have bought the full kit, and it was around $89 or $90. And the difference is it comes with a flange and some bolts. I didn't see spending $40 for, and I think it also may come with a container, but I didn't see spending $40 for that. I went to the local big box store. I paid $5 for the bucket, $1.50 for the top, and I have some 1/4-inch rubber, and I've already cut it to the size of the flange on the bottom of the Dust Deputy. And I decided on the inside of the lid I wanted some stability, so I got a little piece of 1/2-inch cedar here, and I've got the flange drawn on there with the bolt holes. I'm going to take this to the scroll saw, cut it out, and I've got plenty of nuts and bolts. So it didn't make any sense for me to spend the additional money, and plus I get the fun of building the parts and putting this all together. And here's my inside flange. It's not perfect, but it doesn't have to be. I'll be the only one that sees it. What I want to do now is get these holes drilled out. Good news. I went to work, and I happened to go to my boss's office to take a look at his computer, and he had this 20-gallon drum that had come in with material in it. And once the material was used out of the drum, he said that I could have it for my shop. So this is going to be great. I'm going from a 5-gallon plastic bucket to a 20-gallon thick-walled cardboard bucket with a metal lid. This is going to be great for support of the Dust Deputy. So, I'm ready to put this together. The Dust Deputy has a flange on the bottom with 6 mounting holes. And I've gone ahead and, with the piece of cedar I cut out earlier, transferred those hole locations to the cedar, and I took the piece of black rubber I'll be using as a flange and with some painter's tape just attached it. So I'm going to go ahead and get those holes drilled now. That looks really good. And the holes transferred nicely right through the rubber for the gasket. I need to find the center of this support and gasket so that I can go ahead and get the proper diameter circle drawn on here and get it cut out so that this fits nicely underneath the flange on the Dust Deputy. And that should get me pretty darn close right there. Taking a quick measurement, I can see that the opening on the bottom of the Dust Deputy is right at about 3 inches. I set my compass for just a hair over 1.5 inches, and the reason why I went a tiny bit larger is because I don't want there to be a lip around the bottom of the Dust Deputy so that anything catches. I want it to be wide open so that all of the dust goes straight through into the barrel. I'll get a starter hole drilled on this, and I'm going to take it back over to the scroll saw and get the center section cut out. The flange that will go on the bottom of the drum lid and the rubber gasket that will go on top of the drum lid between the lid and the Dust Deputy are finished. What I want to do now is turn my attention to the lid of the drum so I can go ahead and get the bolt pattern cut out on it or drilled out on it and get the center circle cut out, and then I'll be able to attach the Dust Deputy directly to the lid of the drum. I brought my drum lid over to my work table, and it's got this nice little indentation right in the center of it, and I'm going to kind of use that to eyeball the Dust Deputy and center it on the lid. And I think that looks pretty good, so now I'm just going to get my holes marked and then we'll get them drilled out. I went ahead and dimpled the center of each of the holes. That'll just help me keep the bit aligned properly. I've got my holes drilled, and what I'm going to do is take the rubber gasket that I made, and I'm going to line it up with the holes. That looks pretty good. And I'm going to go ahead and draw a circle on the lid, which I'll cut out to allow the chips to fall through. I'm going to go ahead and use a Dremel style tool with a cutoff wheel to remove this section of metal. As you can see, my cutoff wheel was ground away relatively quickly. I'm just about done. There's maybe 1.5 inches of material left, I'm going to swap out the wheel. We'll get that cut off. I'm going to grab a file and just sort of clean this up because I guarantee that is razor sharp right now. Looks pretty good, feels good, no jagged edges. What I want to do now is just kind of line the Dust Deputy up and make sure I've got a good fit and there's not a lip here to catch dust. From this angle and looking straight down through the top of the Dust Deputy, everything looks like it lines up really well. So I'm going to go ahead and get this assembled to the lid. I've got everything cinched down. I do have one very long bolt here. I thought about taking the Dremel and cutting it off, but really, I don't see why it's going to matter. If you look inside, you can see there's no lip around the Dust Deputy, so all of the dust and chips should fall straight through into the can. This barrel that I got came with a locking metal ring, so I'm going to go ahead and install that right now, and this should help get a nice tight seal. If I notice any leakage around the seal, or if I notice the Dust Deputy is not performing as well as it should, I can always come back and put some weather stripping or a little bit of rubber around the inside of the drum to help get a tighter seal. A tiny bit ahead of myself on this project. One of the things that Oneida recommends to help stop the buildup of static electricity and a possible static discharge, which could be painful or even cause an accident in the shop, is to use some metallic tape and to basically run some metallic tape along the inlet, and then from the outlet down, it should go under one of these bolts. So I'm going to remove this bolt and go ahead and get some tape run down through here. I'll also attach a wire underneath of this bolt, which I'll run down to the ground to ground this, and that should eliminate any static buildup. I had to kind of reinforce the tape here and here because as I made the cut into the angle, it wasn't the 90-degree angle that got me, but it was the curve of the inlet and the curve just above the flange that caused the tape to split a little on either end. So I put another piece on there just to kind of make sure I had a good connection. And I've got it run all the way out to the end. Very happy about that. I'm going to go ahead and get my bolt reattached with a piece of wire that I'll run all the way down the side of the drum. Running this wire down the side of the drum is going to interfere with the metal flange. So what I'm going to have to do is make sure I put this on first and just let it drop down the side of the drum as opposed to pulling it off over the top of the drum. But I'll go ahead and get this latched on. And now I can continue running the wire down the side. I'm just using a 24 gauge wire. That should be enough. If I find that it's not, I can always come back later and add a larger wire. I'm going to kind of leave this a little bit loose. There we go. I know you couldn't see what I did at the bottom, but I just took this to the bottom of the barrel and just pressed it right around the bottom flange, and there's the shape of the bottom flange. And now what I'm going to do is attach it to the bottom of the barrel. What I thought I would do is just use a self-tapping screw and drive it right down through this flange, and then I can twist the wire around it. And I'm going to leave a little bit of slack in the wire, and the reason why is because I have to let that flange drop down the barrel as opposed to being able to take it over the wire. Well, a little tighter than I thought, but that should allow me to take care of dissipating any static charge that might build up. So I went ahead and emptied out my shop vac, and I, to the best of my ability, cleaned off my shop vac filter. I'm going to get everything plugged up, all of the hoses, and then I've got quite a mess over here on the floor where I've been turning, and we're going to clean that up and see just how efficient this Dust Deputy is. I ran into one small problem, and that is the end that normally clips into the shop vac connector will not plug into the Dust Deputy. I had to put the hose on backwards, so we're going to have to vacuum with the inlet in the reverse position. I'll swing by the big box store and pick up an adapter for that, and I won't have this issue much longer. Not the best job of cleaning, but I think that's because I was using the wrong end of the hose. If I was able to flip it around, I have a couple of attachments that really help do a nice job with picking the dust up. So let's take a look in the barrel and in the shop vac and see what we've got. Start with the shop vac. Let's take a look, and I don't really see anything that gathered along the filter. As I look down in the shop vac, you saw how much material, let me get out of the light there, I was sucking up, and I see very little material. I don't know if any of that came from what I was doing or if that was just some leftover residue. Now let's take a look in the drum. There we go. And you can see there's quite a bit of material in there. So all in all, I think it did a fairly decent job. I'm anxious to go ahead and get the adapter for the inlet, and let me show you a close-up here of what I'm talking about. Here's where the only problem I have is. This part that attaches to my shop vac does not attach real well to the Dust Deputy. I had to use the inlet side of the hose. That fits fine. I'm sure that my local hardware store sells an adapter, and I'm going to pick one up. And I'm anxious to start putting this to the test. Where I really want to test this out is on the lathe while I'm sanding, because that's where I'm picking up the most fine dust, and that's the stuff that's causing me a huge problem with my shop vac filter. So if it can separate that from the air and drop it into the barrel, I'm going to be very, very happy. I really hope you enjoyed my video on how I set the Dust Deputy up for my shop. I had two small problems. One was with the inlet on the Dust Deputy. It would not fit my hose. That's going to be very easily remedied. I'm going to swing by the hardware store and pick up an adapter, so not worried about that. And the second issue was when I ran my ground wire down the side of the drum, and this was totally on me, I ended up getting the wire a bit too tight, so when I released the ring to remove the top from the Dust Deputy to show the amount of material that it had collected inside the barrel, I broke the wire. Not a problem. I'll just use a little bit longer piece of wire and make sure I leave a little more slack in it. Other than that, I was pretty excited with how much material ended up in the barrel and how little ended up in the shop vac. The true test for me is going to be sanding on my lathe. If I can separate that dust out, which totally plugs my filter, and keep the volume of air up so that it's sucking more of that out of the air and I'm breathing less of it, I'm going to be real happy with this. And I'll talk about it in the future as I use it. I'll give you guys kind of some updates on how it went and what I think about it. All in all, I'd have to say I'm very happy at this point. I want to thank you for joining me today. I want you to know that you are always welcome in my shop. Come back and see me again real soon. Have a great evening, everybody.